Welcome to Cheating Story Exposed. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss the next story. Every day, we uncover the truth, one secret at a time. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd call off a wedding 3 weeks before the ceremony. I'd spent months planning, paid deposits, sent invitations. But I also never thought I'd be the kind of person who'd be used as a puppet in someone's twisted psychological experiment. My name is Owen, and this is the story of how my fiancée's loyalty test became the biggest mistake of her life. Lydia and I met during our first year of graduate school. She was studying marketing. I was in software engineering. We were at a mutual friend's birthday party, and she spilled red wine on my shirt while trying to navigate through a crowded room. Most people would have just apologized and moved on, but Lydia insisted on paying for the dry cleaning, then suggested we grab coffee so she could properly make it up to me. That coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a weekend trip to the coast. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. For 3 years, our relationship felt solid. We had our arguments like any couple, but nothing that ever made me question whether we were right for each other. She was ambitious and driven, sometimes a little too concerned with what other people thought, but I found that endearing. She pushed me to be better, to take risks with my career. When I got offered a senior developer position at a tech startup, she was the first person I told. When she landed her dream job at a boutique marketing firm, I took her to her favorite restaurant to celebrate. We got engaged on a rainy Saturday in April. I'd planned this elaborate proposal at the botanical gardens, but it started pouring halfway through our walk. We ended up sheltering under a massive oak tree, both of us soaked and laughing, and I just couldn't wait anymore. I got down on one knee right there in the mud, pulled out the ring, and asked her to marry me. She said yes before I'd even finished the question. It was perfect. Imperfect, but perfect. The wedding planning started immediately. Lydia threw herself into it with the intensity she brought to everything. She created spreadsheets, color-coded schedules, Pinterest boards with hundreds of pins. I was happy to let her take the lead on most decisions. I cared about marrying her, not about whether the napkins were eggshell or ivory. I helped where I could, book the venue, organized the rehearsal dinner, handled the tech side of our wedding website. 3 weeks before the wedding, everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday evening. I was working late on a project deadline, and Lydia had texted earlier saying she was having dinner with her best friend, Kiera. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. "We need to talk, tonight." My stomach dropped. Those 4 words have never meant anything good. I wrapped up what I was working on and drove to our apartment. The entire drive, I ran through possibilities. Had I forgotten something important, said something that upset her? Was she having cold feet? When I got home, Lydia was sitting on the couch with red-rimmed eyes. She'd been crying. My first instinct was concern. I rushed over, asked what was wrong, if someone had died. She just shook her head and said, "Owen, I can't do this anymore." "Can't do what?" I asked, genuinely confused. "This. Us, the wedding." Her voice was flat, rehearsed. "I don't think I'm ready to get married." The floor dropped out from under me. We were 3 weeks away. The invitations had been sent. The venue was paid for. Her dress had been altered. We just finalized the seating chart 2 days ago, and now she was telling me she wasn't ready. "Where is this coming from?" I managed to ask. "Yesterday everything was fine. We were laughing about your aunt's dietary restrictions. What changed?" "Nothing changed," she said, not meeting eyes. "That's the problem. I need space. I need time to think about whether this is really what I want." I spent the next hour trying to understand. Was it something I'd done? Was there someone else? Was she feeling pressured by her family? She gave me nothing but vague answers. She needed space. She needed to be sure. She couldn't explain it. She just knew she needed to pause everything. Finally, I asked the obvious question. "What about the wedding?" "We'll have to cancel it," she said simply. "Or postpone it. I don't know. I just know I can't walk down that aisle in 3 weeks feeling like this." She asked me to leave. She said she needed the apartment to herself for a few days to think. I packed a bag, numb and moving on autopilot, and went to stay with my best friend, Nathan. The entire drive to his place, I kept thinking I was in a nightmare and would wake up any moment. Nathan and his wife, Rachel, were incredible. They gave me their guest room, let me vent, didn't push me to make sense of something that made no sense. Nathan had been my roommate in college, the best man in my upcoming, now maybe not upcoming, wedding. He knew Lydia almost as well as I did, and even he was baffled. "This doesn't sound like her," he said that first night as we sat in his living room. "Lydia's a lot of things, but flaky isn't one of them. She's the most decisive person I know." "Maybe I don't know her as well as I thought," I said, staring at my beer bottle. For 2 days I heard nothing from Lydia. I texted her once asking if we could talk. She replied with, "Still need time, please respect that." So I did. I threw myself into work, tried not to think about the fact that my life had just imploded, and avoided the pitying looks from Nathan and Rachel. On the 3rd day, everything changed. I was in Nathan's home office, catching up on emails when my phone rang. It was Kira, Lydia's best friend. We weren't particularly close, but we were friendly enough. I assumed she was calling to check on me or maybe to explain what was going on with Lydia. "Owen," she said, her voice tight. "Are you alone right now?" "Yeah, why? I need to tell you something and you're probably going to be really angry, but you need to know." She paused. "Lydia didn't actually want to break up with you." I sat up straighter. "What? It's a test," Kira said. The words tumbled out fast, like she was afraid she'd lose her nerve. "She's testing you to see if you'll fight for her. To see if you really love her enough to not give up when things get hard." I couldn't speak. Literally couldn't form words. My brain was trying to process what she just said and kept hitting error messages. "She got the idea from some stupid article she read," Kira continued. "About how to know if your partner is really committed. It said that truly devoted partners will fight for the relationship even when their partner pushes them away. She decided to test whether you do that." "She decided to test me, asterisk," I repeated slowly. "I told her it was insane," Kira said quickly. "I told her she was going to ruin everything, but she said you'd been too complacent lately, too comfortable, and she needed to know you'd fight for her when it mattered. She said if you really loved her, you'd show up with flowers, grand gestures, refuse to accept the breakup. She's been waiting for you to win her back." "We're 3 weeks from our wedding," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "She tanked our relationship 3 weeks before our wedding as a asterisk test." "I know, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have waited this long to tell you, but she swore me to secrecy. But after seeing what this is doing to you and knowing she's sitting at home thinking this is all going according to plan, I couldn't not tell you." After I hung up, I sat there for probably 20 minutes just staring at the wall. Nathan eventually found me and asked what was wrong. When I told him, his face went through about 5 different emotions before landing on pure rage. "That's psychotic," he said flatly. "Owen, that's genuinely psychotic behavior." "It's manipulation," Rachel added. She'd appeared in the doorway, having overheard. "It's emotional manipulation. She created a crisis to force you to perform love for her. That's not testing commitment, that's testing how much control she has over you." They were right. And suddenly everything clicked into place. This wasn't the first time Lydia had done something like this, just the first time it had been this extreme. She'd occasionally pull back or create small conflicts to see how I'd respond, then be satisfied when I'd reassure her or make some gesture to smooth things over. I'd always thought she just needed extra reassurance sometimes. Now I realized she'd been running experiments on me the entire relationship. I felt sick. But underneath the nausea was something else: anger. Cold, clear anger. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you do stupid things. The calculated kind that makes you think very carefully about your next move. "I need to know something," I said to Nathan. "If I wanted to record a conversation on my phone, how would I do that?" By that evening, I had a plan. I wasn't going to play Lydia's game. I wasn't going to show up with flowers and beg her to take me back. I was going to let her think her test was working, document everything, and then expose exactly who she was in front of everyone who mattered. But first, I needed more information. I called Lydia and kept my voice gentle, hurt, uncertain exactly what she'd expect. "Lydia, I miss you. Can we please talk? I don't care about the wedding, I just care about us." "I don't know if I'm ready," she said. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. This was what she'd been waiting for. "Please, just coffee. Just let me see you. I've been going crazy these past few days." I hated every word, but I needed her confident, thinking she was in control. She agreed to meet me the next day. Before I went, Nathan helped me set up a recording app on my phone. In our state, one-party consent was legal for recording conversations as long as one person in the conversation knew it was being recorded. It was admissible. I made sure the app was working, then went to meet my fiancée. We met at the coffee shop where we'd had our first date. Lydia had clearly put effort into her appearance, full makeup, hair styled, wearing my favorite sweater of hers. She was setting a scene. "Thank you for meeting me," I said, sitting down across from her. My phone was in my jacket pocket, recording everything. "Of course," she said softly. "I've been thinking about you too." "I don't understand what happened," I said, letting my voice crack slightly. "Everything was perfect. I thought we were happy." "We were," she said. "But Owen, you have to understand marriage is forever. I needed to be absolutely sure." "Sure of what?" "That you really love me, that you won't just give up when things get hard, that you'll fight for us." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "These past few days have been hard, but they've also shown me how much you care. You're here, you're trying, that means everything." I wanted to throw my coffee in her face. Instead, I said, "So what happens now?" "Now we move forward," she said, smiling. "We get married, but knowing that you passed this test, that you proved you're committed, it makes me feel so much more secure about our future." "A test," I repeated. "I know it sounds harsh," she said quickly. "But relationships need these moments sometimes. They make you stronger." I extracted a promise from her that she'd fully explain this to our families before the wedding, that she'd tell them the breakup was her idea, her test, and that I'd proven myself. She agreed readily, probably thinking it would make her look devoted, and me look like the romantic hero who'd won her back. The recording was perfect. Her own words admitting to the manipulation, framing it as some kind of relationship wisdom. I had exactly what I needed. Over the next week, I played the role of grateful fiancé who'd been given a second chance. I let her think everything was back on track. Meanwhile, I was having very different conversations with Nathan and Rachel and making very different plans. The rehearsal dinner was scheduled for the Friday before our Saturday wedding. Both families would be there, along with our wedding party and close friends. Lydia had planned it meticulously, a private room at an upscale Italian restaurant, formal but warm. She'd created a whole schedule for the evening, including time for toasts. I told her I wanted to make a toast. She loved that idea. "It'll be so romantic," she said. What I didn't tell her was what that toast would actually contain. The day before the rehearsal dinner, I met with my parents and explained everything: the fake breakup, Kira's call, the recording, my plan. My mother cried. My father, normally the most mild-mannered man alive, said words I'd never heard him use before. But they supported my decision. They'd never been entirely comfortable with Lydia anyway, though they'd never said so directly. My mom admitted that Lydia had always seemed a little too concerned with appearances, too calculated. "I just wanted you to be happy," she said. "And you seemed happy, so I kept my concerns to myself. I'm so sorry, honey." "Don't apologize, Mom. I didn't see it either, or I didn't want to see it." The rehearsal dinner arrived. I dressed carefully, charged my phone to full battery, and triple-checked that my presentation file was ready to go. Nathan drove me to the restaurant. "Last chance to back out," he said as we pulled into the parking lot. "I'm not backing out." "Good. She deserves this." The private room was beautiful. Lydia had outdone herself with the decorations, string lights, elegant centerpieces. Everything photographable and perfect. Both families were already there, mingling over appetizers and drinks. Lydia's parents, Tom and Virginia, greeted me warmly. Her mother hugged me and said how glad she was that we'd worked things out. Lydia looked stunning in a navy blue dress. She came over immediately, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Thank you for fighting for us. Tonight's going to be perfect." "It's definitely going to be memorable," I replied. We sat down to dinner. The food was excellent. The conversation flowed. Lydia's father gave a brief, warm toast about love and partnership. My mother shared a funny story about me as a kid. Everything was exactly as Lydia had planned. Then came my turn. I stood up, glass in hand, and cleared my throat. The room quieted. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I started. "It means the world to Lydia and me to have everyone we love in one place celebrating our relationship." Speaking of our relationship, I wanted to take a moment to talk about what makes a partnership really work. Lydia was beaming at me. She had no idea. "Trust is the foundation of any relationship," I continued. "Trust, honesty, and respect. Without those things, you don't really have a partnership, you have a performance." I paused. "Which brings me to something I need to share with all of you." I pulled out my phone. I'd already connected it to the restaurant's AV system earlier when I'd told them I had a surprise video for my fiancé. The screen on the wall flickered to life. "3 weeks ago, Lydia broke up with me," I said. The room went completely silent. "She told me she wasn't ready to get married, that she needed space." I was devastated. I stayed with Nathan, trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, how I could fix it. Lydia's smile was frozen on her face. She was starting to realize this wasn't going the direction she'd expected. "Then I got a phone call from Kira," I continued, looking directly at Lydia now. "And I learned that the breakup wasn't real. It was a test, a loyalty test to see if I'd fight for the relationship, to see if I'd prove my love by refusing to accept her decision and essentially pestering her until she took me back." "Owen," Lydia started, but I held up my hand. "I have a recording of our conversation from last week where you explain all this in your own words. I think everyone should hear it." I pressed play. Lydia's voice filled the room, crystal clear. "But Owen, you have to understand marriage is forever. I needed to be absolutely sure that you really love me, that you won't just give up when things get hard, that you'll fight for us." My voice. "So what happens now? Lydia, now we move forward, we get married, but knowing that you passed this test, that you proved you're committed, it makes me feel so much more secure about our future." My voice. "A test." "Lydia, I know it sounds harsh, but relationships need these moments sometimes. They make you stronger." I stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Lydia's face had gone from red to white. Her mother looked like she might faint. Her father's jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscles jumping. "Lydia created a crisis 3 weeks before our wedding," I said calmly. "Not because she had genuine doubts, but to manipulate me into performing devotion for her. She wanted to watch me scramble and beg and prove myself worthy of her. She turned what should have been the happiest time of our lives into a psychological experiment where I was the unwilling subject." "You recorded me without my knowledge," Lydia finally managed to say, her voice shaking. That's illegal." "Actually, it's not. One-party consent state," Nathan called out helpfully from his seat. "Lydia, what the hell is wrong with you?" Her father's voice was low and dangerous. I'd never heard him sound like that. "Dad, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," he said. "You manipulated someone who loved you. You played games with someone's emotions. Is that what we taught you?" Her mother was crying now. My parents were sitting with their arms around each other, looking sad but not surprised. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, and my voice was steady. "There will be no wedding tomorrow. I will not be marrying someone who thinks love is a game to be won through tests. I will not be marrying someone who responds to feeling insecure by creating chaos instead of having an honest conversation." "Owen, please." Lydia stood up, tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake. I know that now, but we can work through this. We love each other." "Do we?" "Because I don't think you know what love actually is, Lydia. Love isn't about making your partner jump through hoops to prove themselves. It's not about creating fake crises to feel more secure. It's about being a team. About trust, about basic respect. I turned to address the room. I apologize to all of you for the wasted trip for the canceled wedding, but I'm not sorry for walking away from a relationship built on manipulation. Lydia grabbed my arm. We can postpone. We can go to counseling. We can fix this. I gently removed her hand. No, we can't, because the problem isn't something external we need to fix together. The problem is who you are and the choices you make. And I don't want to spend my life wondering what test is coming next, what hoop I'll have to jump through to prove I'm worthy of you. I deserve better than that. Her best friend, Kira, stood up. Owen, I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner. You told me when you could, I said, and I'm grateful for that, honestly. Lydia was full-on sobbing now, but it wasn't moving me. I'd spent the last week processing this, and I'd reached a place of clarity. This wasn't anger anymore, it was simply knowing what I needed to do and doing it. Her father approached me. Owen, I want you to know that I'm horrified. By this, absolutely horrified. I hope you'll let me reimburse you for your share of the wedding expenses. I appreciate that, Tom, I said, but I'd rather just be done with all of it. I left the restaurant with Nathan and Rachel. My parents followed. Behind us, I could hear Lydia's mother saying something in a sharp voice, her father's deeper tones responding. I didn't look back. The next day, while I was supposed to be getting married, I was instead in Nathan's backyard helping him build a new deck. My phone was full of messages from Lydia, from her friends, from relatives I hadn't talked to in years who'd heard what happened. I ignored all of them except one. It was from Kira. You did the right thing. She's telling everyone you humiliated her on purpose, but her parents aren't buying it. Her mom asked me point-blank if the test thing was real. I told her everything. I'm sorry it had to go down like this, but you deserve to know the truth. Over the following weeks, the story spread through our social circle. Reactions were split. Some people thought I'd been cruel to expose her like that. Most people, once they heard the recording, understood. A few of her friends tried to defend her, saying she'd just been insecure and made a mistake. But even they couldn't really justify what she'd done. Lydia tried to contact me multiple times. Long texts about how she'd learned and grown, how she realized now what she'd put me through, how she wanted a chance to prove she could be better. I never responded. Eventually, she stopped trying. I moved out of our shared apartment and into a place of my own. A one-bedroom with exposed brick and big windows not far from Nathan and Rachel. I threw myself into work, got promoted to lead developer on a major project. Started going to therapy to process everything and figure out why I'd tolerated smaller versions of this behavior throughout the relationship. My therapist asked me something during one session that stuck with me. When you look back at your relationship with Lydia, can you identify moments where you felt like yourself? Fully yourself, not performing or managing her feelings? I thought about it for a long time. The truth was, I couldn't remember many. I'd been so busy being the boyfriend she needed me to be that I'd forgotten how to just be. 6 months later, I ran into one of Lydia's co-workers at a coffee shop. We'd met a few times at office parties. She looked uncomfortable when she saw me, but I went over to say hello anyway. How are you? She asked carefully. Honestly, I'm good, really good. I'm glad, she said. For what it's worth, everyone at the office thought what she did was insane. She tried to paint herself as the victim, said you'd humiliated her intentionally, but we all knew her too well. She pulled similar stuff with friends, smaller scale, testing people, creating drama. It was just who she was. Is she still at the firm? No, actually. She left a few months ago. Last I heard, she moved to Chicago. I nodded. I didn't wish her ill, but I also couldn't bring myself to care much about where she'd ended up. A year after the rehearsal dinner that never led to a wedding, I was in a completely different place. I'd been dating someone new for a few months, Alina, a graphic designer I'd met through mutual friends. We'd taken things slow, really getting to know each other without pressure or games. When I'd told her about what happened with Lydia, she'd listened, asked thoughtful questions, and then said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. It sounds like you handled it the only way you could. No judgment, no drama, just understanding. It was such a foreign experience that it took me weeks to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know what's weird? I told Nathan one night over beers. I used to think the rehearsal dinner was this terrible, dramatic thing I had to do. But now, I think it was the best decision I ever made. Because I drew a line, I showed myself and everyone else that I wouldn't accept being manipulated, that I knew my worth. Character-defining moment, Nathan said, raising his glass. Those are rare, most people never get that clarity. I wish I'd gotten it in a less dramatic way. Yeah, well, Lydia wasn't going to give you that option. She forced your hand and you played it perfectly. I thought about Lydia sometimes, especially in the early days. Wondered if she'd ever understand what she'd done wrong or if she'd just found new people to test and manipulate. But eventually, those thoughts faded. She became part of my past, an important lesson, but not a defining feature of my life. The thing about tests is that they reveal truth. Lydia had meant to test my devotion, but what she actually tested was her own character. And she'd failed spectacularly. Looking back now, I'm grateful. Grateful to Kira for telling me the truth. Grateful to Nathan and Rachel for supporting me. Grateful to my parents for backing my decision even though it meant a canceled wedding and family embarrassment. But mostly, I'm grateful to myself for trusting my gut and walking away. Because the truth is, I did fight for our relationship, just not in the way Lydia expected. I fought for what a relationship should be. Honest, respectful, built on trust. And when I realized ours wasn't those things, I fought for my own dignity by walking away. That's not giving up. That's knowing your worth, and that's the lesson I'll carry into every relationship for the rest of my life. Real love doesn't need tests. It doesn't need games or manipulation or proof. Real love shows up honestly, communicates openly, and treats you like a partner, not a subject in an experiment. Lydia wanted to test whether I'd fight for her. In the end, I did something better. I fought for myself. And I won. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you're facing something similar, if someone in your life is testing you or playing games with your emotions, I hope you'll recognize it for what it is, manipulation. And I hope you'll have the courage to do what I did, value yourself enough to walk away. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Some relationships aren't worth saving. And sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is simply say no more and mean it.